G'day boys, welcome to the presentation for Stem23 for our HSC syllabus. And this one is the physiological adaptations in response to training. So what we're looking at is what happens to the body as a result of training, rather than simply saying, oh, a person gets fitter, or they can run faster or run longer. We specifically here are looking at what happens. And the specific things we're looking at are listed here. This is obviously straight from the syllabus. So that is what we're concerned with. If you look over here at the Learn 2, we're saying we're examining the relationship between the principles of training, the physiological adaptations and improved performance. And the way we do that is obviously by applying the principles of training, then these physiological adaptations are going to occur. And because these physiological adaptations occur, then performance is going to improve. And what we look at is in what way will performance improve. And predominantly with these ones, particularly the first four, they're mainly concerned with aerobic performance. Muscle hypertrophy and the effect on the fast twitch muscle fibers is more your strength power type events. So we will, as we go through, you'll be able to see what sort of effect that would have on performance. So again, here just on this slide, they're the six areas that we're looking at. So let's have a look at the first one, resting heart rate. So obviously your resting heart rate is simply your heart rate at rest, and best measured when you first get up in the morning, not simply sitting down in the middle of the day because you've been on the go. You may have had something to drink that may have sped up your heart rate, either a Red Bull or one of those energy drinks or a Coke or a coffee or something like that. So resting heart rate is best measured when you first get up in the morning. So what actually happens as a result of training is you have a lower resting heart rate than pre-training. And we'll see exactly why that happens when we talk about the stroke volume. But basically your heart is able to pump out more blood per beat, so therefore it doesn't need to beat as often. So that's a pretty simple explanation there for resting heart rate. Related pretty closely to the resting heart rate is the stroke volume. So you can see here that's the amount of blood pumped out per beat. Because your heart becomes more efficient, it increases in size, so therefore it pumps out more blood per beat, I should say. So therefore stroke volume increases, and it's because this stroke volume increases, we just go back to resting heart rate, that's why resting heart rate decreases. Because as I said before, because your stroke volume is pumping out more blood per beat, therefore your heart says, well, I don't need to beat as often, so I'm going to beat less, so your resting heart rate decreases. Now, just looking at your cardiac output, or this is your stroke volume here, you can see the difference between a trained and an untrained athlete. There's quite significant there, and that's elite cross-country skiers. So that's a huge difference. So just now we've looked at stroke volume, that increases. Cardiac output, firstly, what is it? And that's the amount of blood pumped out of the heart every minute. So what happens to that? Well, that actually increases as well. Because stroke volume is increased, then cardiac output is going to increase. Okay, you can see here the formula there is stroke volume times your heart rate. So heart rate being how many times does your heart beat in a minute, stroke volume, how much blood does the heart pump per beat. So if one of these two has increased, then it stands to reason to say that cardiac output has to increase. Okay, so stroke volume and cardiac output are very closely related together, as are stroke volume and your resting heart rate. Okay, now just note this cardiac output is measured during exercise. So the heart rate is not, this heart rate here is not referring to your resting heart rate. It's referring to your heart rate when you're actually exercising. So you can see here, to increase cardiac output, you need to increase your stroke volume or increase your heart rate or increase both. And when you exercise, your heart rate definitely increases, and because of your training, your stroke volume is increased, so therefore cardiac output is going to increase. Whoops, just went backwards. Now looking at the next bit, oxygen uptake and lung capacity. So oxygen uptake actually improves. That's the ability of the body to obviously take in oxygen. And that actually improves as a result of the training, and you can read here through the reasons why it's improved. Probably the interesting thing is that the lung capacity of athletes does not really increase at a great level. It does slightly increase after training, but in general the actual lung capacity is stays round about the same, only with a slight increase. So the big difference between a trained and untrained athlete is not that they can necessarily breathe more oxygen into their lungs, it's that their body is able to utilise more of the oxygen that does get breathed into their lungs. Okay, so just making note of this point at the bottom, that trained athletes are more efficient because they have an improved oxygen uptake, not an increased lung capacity. Now, hemoglobin levels, what happens to them? Well, firstly, you look at what hemoglobin is, and that transports oxygen around the body. The body produces more hemoglobin during exercise, so as a result of aerobic training, hemoglobin levels also increase, and obviously that means the more hemoglobin means the more oxygen can be transported around the body. The more oxygen transported around the body means you can work, your muscles can work more efficiently and for longer periods of time, therefore improving your performance. Muscular hypertrophy. The word hypertrophy refers to an increase in muscle size. Obviously, when the more a muscle gets used, the more it's going to increase in size. So that stands to reason to say that as your muscles get used over and over and over again, they're going to increase in size. Possibly not to the extent of this bloke here, but still there will be an increase in size. So, and that again increases the strength and also therefore increases performance. And lastly, we're looking at the effect on the slow and fast twitch fibres. These are different classifications of muscle fibre types, and if you look at these two pictures, the bloke on the right would be predominantly a fast twitch fibre athlete, the bloke on the left predominantly a slow twitch fibre athlete. Looking at the slow twitch fibres, you can see here that they increase the number of capillaries, and that's a good thing because that means more blood, which in turn means more hemoglobin, which means more oxygen carried around the body. The fast twitch fibres, you can see here that training these fast twitch fibres increases their capacity, but it increases their ability to contract rapidly, it increases the power output of them, so there's quite a significant effect there, and obviously that's going to translate into some positive performances. And that is your physiological adaptations to training. Thanks for listening.